stage, and he looked very good in that one as well. I mean, Solar looked strong this tournament, and Solar really kind of pushed Dark yesterday, but Dark looked like a man on a mission. You've said it, it's kind of the bad boy versus perhaps the nicest guy in this building, as Jeff described him. Dark versus Stats is about to begin, and it doesn't get much better than this.
If you are at home, this is the PvZ you want to watch. Both these players do everything about as good as you can. And to get these guys introduced, spawning in the bottom left side, as our blue Protoss, playing for Splice, it is Stats.
The Shield of Ire, as they also call him. And in the right top side, we're looking at the main base of the man that wants to make this an all-Zerg affair in the grand finals. Guys, give it up for Dark.
The bulldozer Zerg. Strong, aggressive, but he can also play a macro game. Dark can do it all, which is one of the very important things in StarCraft 2 these days. If you are a linear in a one-track mind, you can be hard counted in a lot of ways. Neither one of these players is like that at all.
And that's what we saw a little bit in that first semi-final. I think Hero had an absolutely phenomenal run, and I'm sure he's very happy and pleased with his performance overall here, especially after being eliminated actually quite early on in this tournament, or at least getting very, very close to it, but then somehow barely surviving. That's not really the case for these two. They've looked solid, they've looked very strong, but like you said, they're not one-dimensional. At one point, Sutu started to build units because he really expected these attacks of Hero to come and come again. That's not how Dark can play. Dark cannot play in the exact same way as Sutu played against Hero, because Stats and Hero have very, very little in common. The only thing they have in common is they play Protoss. Other than that, polar opposites.
Definitely, Kevin. The only way that you can beat Dark and Stats, given that there's no way to hard counter them, there's no way to know exactly what they're going to do, you just have to outplay them. So this is going to be as top level as PvZ gets.
Yep.
We do see a very macro-orientated opening from Dark here, opting for 3 hatcheries. Fairly standard. This is one of the largest maps in the pool.
Yep, that's why I think this is going to be a very fun semi-final. Are we going to see some aggression? Absolutely. From both sides, perhaps. I mean, Stats also has a couple of tricks up his sleeve. And of course, Dark can go for some of those Nidus builds we've seen throughout the tournament. He can do Link Floods, he can do Bailing Bust. That's especially something he likes to do against non-Korean Protosses. He's been Bailing Busting them for years. But it's going to be a nice mixture. There is a very good chance we're going to see some ultimate late-game scenarios with a lot of maybe lurkers as well. Broodlords obviously will be shown in this best-of-5 unless something very weird happens. And Stats, there's a chance that he ends up with a couple Tempest, a couple Carriers, a lot of units we didn't see in that first semi-final. I'm absolutely expecting to appear over here.
And Dark is a player that definitely disrespects his opponents. You can see it in his play. He will just throw the whole kitchen at you, and he gets away with it a lot of the time. But I think of all players in the scene, Stats is one that he can't just totally think about that. Like, he has to really anticipate his opponent, because Stats, he'll do everything a Protoss does, but way better than anyone you've ever played before.
As the first Adept is making its way to the other side of the map, this is of course to scout. Stats wants to make sure that Dark is not doing one of those very crazy builds, and you don't have to let this finish up. He could, because there's only 2 Zerglings here, so maybe he feels like letting this one finish, but he wants to be safe, doesn't want to take any risk, but at least he gets a good view of the main base. He sees no super quick lair, so he knows he doesn't have to worry about a Nidus, and he sees plenty of drones. So Stats is like, alright, that's all I needed. I just wanted to make sure that we can turn this into a normal game of StarCraft 2.
The Adept isn't often used for it is often used for killing drones, but the main purpose of it and how Stats used it here was just to scout, to make sure nothing cheeky was coming. And that's one of the abilities of Dark. He can throw roaches at you very early on, Link Floods. We do see that he is teching up to a lair here. Both the Overlords were killed for Dark.
All right, we see a second Stargate being slapped down in the main base of Stats. Now, this is a build that was incredibly popular a little while ago. It had its ups and downs. Sometimes you see it all the time, then it falls out of fashion again a little bit. I think a lot of Protoss players were quite worried about some of these Nidus builds, which is why they preferred opening up with the Robo rather than the Stargate. But Stats is going back to his second Stargate. That means he's going to make quite a few Phoenixes. He's even getting my favorite upgrade in the game. It's not Psystorm or anything, guys. I'm a rather straightforward guy. I like my +1 air weapons, man. It's amazing to pick up those Queens, to work on these Overlords. And it's very important for Dark that he picks up on this in time.
This is decently positioned by Dark. He had 2 Queens in the main base and a Spore. Does get to see the cheeky little attack of Stats here. +1 air weapons, though. This means he's going to make a heavy commitment to air. And whether Dark knows anything is happening so far. He needs to check this cybernetic score and see what's going on.
He doesn't, but he does have a very quick Hydra then, by the way. Look at Dark. He skipped the Baneling Nest and he skipped the Roach Warren. Those are 2 buildings. Now we can actually see that this cybernetic score is spinning. And obviously spots that the gateways have already morphed into warp gates. There's not much else you can get out of that cybernetic score. So I think that Dark has a read on this, even though he's not 100% sure. He didn't see all the Phoenixes yet. I think he pretty damn well knows. And like I said, look at Dark's economy, Ben. He's at 61 drones, 5 minutes and 10 seconds into this game. He skipped all the safety buildings, as we like to call them, because if your opponent does hit you with one of those crazy builds that Hero likes to do, like Hero's probably watching this, he's like, man, why do they never open like this against me? My Zealot aggression would be so good. Yes, it would be, but Stats is not Hero. Dark knows that, and it really feels that Dark has a soul read here on Stats in game 1.
Yeah, and both Overlords got denied, and just from one Phoenix and scouting at the front here, look how adamant he is about just checking what he's doing. Doesn't get to see the huge Phoenix count yet, but he definitely sniffs something. The fact that there hasn't been anything out on the map yet. Oh, we have a lot of Lings on the field too.
It seems like, I mean, 60 drone, Hydra, Ling, Bane is actually pretty damn good. Obviously, having a lot of Phoenixes is awesome. To harass, to pick off Overlords, to pick off Queen. They are very good in picking off reinforcements. They are good against Hydras in some weird scenario. The problem is, if you get attacked in the next minute of this game, do you have Archons? Highly unlikely. Do you have Storm? Absolutely impossible. Colossus is not likely. So I actually think that the attack that Dark is planning is going to be very, very scary for Stats to deal with.
This is a huge amount of Phoenix, though, just doing a tour of Dark's base right now, taking out 4 Overlords already for 1 Phoenix.
Yeah, but you want to keep those Phoenixes alive. I mean, picking off the 4 Overlords. Oh my goodness, Stats, you gotta pay attention
into it.
Oh my goodness, he can recall. He can also go out via the left top side. He loses his second Phoenix. Phoenix number 3 goes down as well. And this is not going according to plan at all. Miscontrols Phoenix number 4. This is a disaster. Dark is actually rebuilding a couple of drones behind it. But if he goes for a massive attack with a lot of Zerglings, a lot of Hydras, and quite a few Banelings, I think Stats is in trouble.
And right now, Kevin, we see the production tab. It is just Hydras on the way here, and lots of shield batteries being made too by Stats. So he's sensing this. He knows that that was a little bit of a blunder, losing that amount of Phoenix. And he is sensing that Dark, if he makes the right call here and goes for an attack, he could be in trouble.
The stasis traps can potentially buy a lot of time as we are going into some split screen here. We'll see a little bit of first-person view from both of these guys. Dark knows that there is a little bit of weakness, most likely, in the defenses of Stats. Stats knows that he needs to hang in there. He's got a couple of stasis traps. He's got those shield batteries. That's very important. Imagine if the stasis trap gets like 10 Banelings. That would be massive. Stats, you gotta be careful.
At least he knows he's there. At least he knows where he is now. He knows the Zerg is coming at him. These are still slow Banelings, but this army, Dark looks like he's wanting to separate the main base and the third. Decent force fields to start off this defense, but there is a lot of Dark pressuring him right now.
Dark knew it. Dark knew he had to worry about stasis traps, so he sent only 1 Zergling forward. He's got a lot of Hydras, and it seems like there is no DPS at all in this army of Stats. This is when that Phoenix count is so important, so you can maybe shave off a couple of Hydras, but it seems like he's not going to get close to it at all. There are still plenty of Banelings left, and Stats is on the ropes here.
Absolutely, Kevin. Lots of Phoenix, but is there enough? There are so many Hydras now getting into the juicy, natural, the Lings. You can't clean up Lings with Phoenix. There is too many, and the Hydras supporting as well. Losing production here also. This is Dark taking the first map very convincingly against Stats.
Very, very convincing game 1 coming out of this, man. It really felt like he just kind of knew. He expected that double Stargate. He played greedy. He went up in economy incredibly quick. And then Stats made a couple errors. And Phoenixes are amazing units to harass, and they can be very good in battles, but they are expensive, and you simply cannot lose 4 Phoenix on the other side of the map just to pick off a couple of Overlords. In no universe is that okay. And this was even a big map as well. On a smaller map, it would be even more deadly, but Stats knew it. After that initial trade, he's like, all right, I think you're going to have a very tough time dealing with my attack. And well, it's safe to say that Stats did have a tough time.
Dark assessed the situation so beautifully. He was very adamant about his Zergling scouting, which got him a bit of a lead. He got early Spore Crawlers, Queens in all the right locations, droned up like a madman too, knowing that there's not going to be any adept pressure early on, or any charge lots, or anything like that. So teched on right up to Lair, with no additional buildings. And then, after seeing those Phoenix too and handling them so well, Phoenix are one of the most snowbally units in StarCraft 2. They either get you an early lead and continue getting you a lead, but the fact that he flew right into that natural there, and it was so well caught by Dark, just beautiful play by Korean Zerg.
What stood out most for me is that even though Dark knew that there was a lot of opportunity there, and he smelled the blood of Stats. He was still very, very calculated. He didn't get tunnel vision on just moving everything forward and getting right on top of those Protoss units and running into a big stasis. No, he picked off the Zealot, and even then he separated just 2 links. He's like, you guys go ahead and activate those stasis traps if they're there. And once again, a big one really could have changed the battle. Imagine that fight with -8 or 9 Hydras. It's a completely different battle.
It was clinical micro by Dark, and as you pointed out, taking out those stasis, those things can really turn the edge of a battle. Getting half your Hydras taken out there by that could be trouble. Anyhow, spawning in the bottom left side of New Repugnancy, it is Stats.
This map is quite a bit smaller than Automaton, which we just played on. And that means that it's possible we're going to see a very different opening coming out of our Protoss. But for now, let's introduce this man. He's representing Gosu Crew, spawning on the right top side. He's up 1-0. Guys, give it up for Dark.
Very convincing victory in that first map from Dark. He was decisive, calculated, and cruel. One mistake from Stats in losing those Phoenix, and he pounced on him. You can't make mistakes at this kind of level of play.
It's really funny. These guys have quite a bit of history with each other, and Dark actually has a winning record over Stats, as you guys saw a little bit in the pregame as well. But what's more interesting about those stats, Ben, it's 15-10 in favor of Dark when it comes to series. But I would say the 4 biggest series I've ever played, not including this one, of course, because I would say this is the biggest of them all. There's way more money on the line and way more potential to live the biggest trophy of their careers. But 4 of the biggest series when it comes to deep runs in an SSL or across finals, Stats actually won 3 out of 4. So Dark has the winning record, but I feel like Stats, up to this point, have won the majority of the series that mattered the most.
Stats is definitely a player that, in my mind, rises to the occasion. He's been the guy that's really pushed Serral to the limit. GSL versus the World Finals, BlizzCon Finals. And even though you just think about that matchup, it's the fact that he got there every time against a field full of really great players.
He is a phenomenal Protoss. I mean, a lot of the Europeans always look at Stats as the go-to Protoss in Korea. Of course, there is Classic as well, who unfortunately couldn't make it this year. He was our finalist last year, and Classic is also one of those guys that perhaps has most in common. But Stats is just a very different kind of Protoss than the Heroes and the Zest, who are fun and exciting in their own way, but they play different and they approach the game very differently.
Definitely. Ever since Rain switched back to Brood War, Stats has been really the flagship player for Protoss.
That's how I see him as well. Like, I really feel that he is Rain. Now Rain is no longer playing this game anymore, and he went back to his roots indeed. That's a pretty quick Roach Warren this game, Ben, by our friend Dark. Now, last game we saw Dark play very greedy. He completely skipped the Roach Warren. He went straight into Lair. He went straight into Hydras, and that was a perfect call going up against double Stargate. This game, it's not just a safety Roach Warren, I'm afraid. Wow, these 2 links are just entering, by the way. This could be very annoying, because Stats needs to know if Dark is planning on producing a lot of units, which I think he is. Dark, it seems like he's going for a big rush here. And these Adepts, they need to be out on the map. They need to see this coming as quickly as possible. Now, I must say, on paper, I always kind of like this for a Protoss, because a Robo is the best defensive building you can have. You get an Immortal out, you throw down your shield batteries, and this is very doable for Stats. But yes, the War Prism and Observers are not going to help out. Stats needs to scout these Roaches as quickly as possible, and I think he will here. What?
Oh my
what?
Lord.
Okay.
Oh, did give 1 Roach away there. So Stats might have sniffed it out by just seeing 1 Roach.
Yeah.
Does march back to his side of the map, and Immortals are being produced instantly.
I love this. How good are these guys? He spots 1 Roach, he spots a minor lack of drones. He's like, all right, I don't need an Observer right now. Hold on. I need shield batteries, and I need an Immortal. And we saw this in an earlier scenario with Zoo versus Zest yesterday, right, on game 1. And Zest defended, but he did lose a lot of probes. I actually think that Stats can defend this a lot more convincingly than Zest did yesterday.
Right now, it looks pretty good for Stats, honestly. He's making shield batteries, got the War Prism out, and the Immortal can even start picking off these Roaches. There is a lot of Dark, but he's even resuming droning in behind this, so he realizes that this aggression cannot work. And now, 22 workers to 38. He's actually in a terrible situation.
I actually like that Dark doesn't even try this, because he knows that Stats is good enough. He knows that Stats is prepared. He was just going to throw away all of his units, and then he would be incredibly vulnerable to a counter. This is not a good scenario at all for Dark, but it's the correct call in my opinion, because he's just not supposed to win games there.
Oh. That was uncharacteristic. At this level of play, nerves do get the better of you sometime.
Is it a full wall-off at the moment for stats? It is, right? Can we take a look at his natural real quick? Yep.
It is a full wall-off, so he is buckled in a little bit. The only way he can kind of ferry out is by warping outside or using the warp prism. But right now, he's going to be feeling pretty good. This is a lot of units for a Zerg to make. You either have the option to make drones or battle units, so seeing this amount of units on the field, he's going to be feeling comfortable.
I still really love the call, though, by Dark. I think that's so much better than being stubborn and running into an Immortal and a Prism and sentries, gateways already being done, shield batteries being thrown up. That's just silly. At that point, it's not supposed to really do a lot of damage. So I really like what Dark did. I don't love his position in this game, but given the circumstances, I absolutely believe he made the correct call there. Now, if you guys wonder real quick, like, why would you make all those units and not even try to rush the opponent? As these Immortals are once again taking a lot of damage, it's safe to say that Dark was hoping for a different opening. If stats goes once again for a Stargate, or even a double Stargate again, but especially if he opens up Stargate with a Phoenix, the build that Dark did is actually very deadly and can straight up give him the win. Unfortunately for Dark, stats went for the Robo this time.
And yeah, Kev, even though this isn't a good situation for Dark at all, if we compare this to 2 minutes ago where he arrives to a wall and a fully defended stats who's overly or super prepared for his attack, it's not looking too terrible. It's definitely not over.
And he's actually handling the War Prism harassment of stats very well up to this point. Sure, a couple of Lings went down and one Roach went down, but this is normally a nightmare scenario for Zerg where you don't have a lot of Queens to work with and your attack has been delayed by a lot. The lair is only halfway done. So normally Warp Prisms and Immortals are one of the most annoying things to go up against. Dark is really making the best out of a pretty dicey start.
We have a total role reversal too. This is the situation where you could say Dark made a mistake with his choice of build, but sometimes that's just how Starcraft 2 works out. People believe it's not about luck, but at this level of play, you have to make gambles, you have to cut corners, you have to do a lot of things to try and catch your opponent off guard. The fact that he's 1-0 up in a series, he can get away with this kind of play, but Stats is doing everything right now.
Yeah, but Dark also knows that it's maybe a little bit too late for Hydras or to go for Banelings. He doesn't have the economy for it. He droned up a little bit, but now he's going to try to make some magic happen with a lot of Lings and Ravagers. Now, Ravagers can really turn battles upside down. Ravagers can make you win fights you're not supposed to win when those Corrosive Balls do connect. The only difference is between Stats and some of these other Protoses is that Stats, if he feels he's ahead, he is actually very comfortable in sitting back and just macroing up. And I don't think that this is what Dark wants. I think Dark was hoping for Stats to maybe move out with a big army and then actually collapse on that Protoss force. But Stats is making all the correct calls here. And this is why there are so many Protoss players who look at this guy and be like, yeah, that's the way I want to play Protoss.
The Shield of Aya, playing like the Shield of Aya. Defending back at home with his main army, keeping those Lings at bay, and then just harassing with a single Warp Prism. This is how I feel Zesh should have handled the situation against Su, in the exact same fashion. And here, he's getting a bit of damage done now. The supplies, they should never really be this close at this stage of the game. It's very good for Stats.
Yep, and upgrade-wise as well, right? There is +2 attack on the way, as we can see that Forge is still spinning. Dark knows he's in a rough spot, but Banelings and Ravagers can absolutely make some miracles happen. I'm sure the Dark is not too happy, but he's just hoping for the right engagement. Maybe he can flank that Protoss army. Maybe he can land those Corrosive Balls in the middle of it. Maybe he can snipe a Prism when there are 2 Immortals or 2 Archons inside of it. All of these things. Wow, he gets an Archon there. That's a little bit sloppy, but in this phase in the game, it's not the end of the world for Stats. But there's plenty of things left to hope for. I don't like it, by the way. Stats goes for an all-out attack. Dark has been preparing for a fight for the last 6 minutes in this game. And against all these Banelings, I think that's enough Banelings to deal with the majority of the Zealots. This is where you get stormed, this is where you sit back. That's what you normally do.
And he's super deep on creep here,
gotta
Kevin.
go home.
That is a lot of Zealots. Oh, actually, just throws a few of his Zealots at it. I think that went about as good as it could for Stats. Yeah. Very good control.
Yeah, he kind of tempted him, right? He's like, hey, I'm on creep, but he really wasn't on creep. All of these Banelings are just crashing into the Archons. Now, if the Archons go down, is there a proper answer against the Lings? I guess there is, with all of these extra Zealots showing up as well.
These are very high upgraded Zealots here. Dark does have a little supply lead, does come in with some Banelings, maybe he can get some juicy hits, but no, these Immortals standing strong, still boosted with more health. That Warp Prism very revealed here and does go down. That might be able to keep Dark in it, as Stats now can't reinforce in this fight.
Yeah, but the extra Zealots did show up though, and that's going to help out quite a bit. Unfortunately, the last Banelings actually crashed into the Immortals, and that's not what you want if your name is Dark. I must say, Dark is doing an awesome job in controlling these Roaches, controlling these Ravagers, but it seems like Stats perhaps has a little too much, and it's just a little too powerful over here.
on the right side, we have all those drones being melted by the Zealots. They just went ham over there. So even if he holds this, his economy has been absolutely gutted. The supplies very close in such a chaotic situation. But Stats got the damage done with this attack.
Yep, Stats. This is a victory for Stats, but it's a messy victory, right? It didn't come without a cost. All of the Archons are gone. Most of the Immortals are gone as well. Even that War Prism went down. And Stats, excuse me, Dark, is Dark trying to counter now? No, he is rebuilding drones. Stats realizing that maybe that was a little eager. He should probably get Storm. That's what he's doing right now. In the end, it was a success for Stats. This worked out, but I think it got a little more dicey than it ever should have been.
The crazy thing about this game, and this often happens in StarCraft 2, the losing player right now in Dark actually to me seems like the better player here. He's been making all the right calls from bad situations. You're always given like 10 options in StarCraft 2, and he's making the right call every time.
It was an absolute shame that the second wave of Banelings from Dark crashed into those Immortals. Obviously, good job by Stats as well, pulling the Zealots away. It's always a two-way dance, right? One person does something right, and the other one, it seems like there is a mistake. Psystorm is done. There are 4 High Templars here. I'd like to see them maybe 1 or 2 in the War Prism, because there were plenty of Banelings and Zerglings. There are Zealots running into the natural of Dark, by the way, as well. These Crossbows will not connect with the High Templars, and this counterattack, I think, is really going to hurt Dark.
Oh, getting those juicy storms on the ramp now. Now he's securing this 4th base of Dark. There are units everywhere. We see drones dying as well. That's over in the natural. And right now, Stats' army is very strong. He is out of storms, and the army of Dark is collapsing on this, but is there just too much Stats at this point in time? The supply tells the tale.
And the other Zealots are coming in from the north side now, I believe, at this point. And Dark knows it as well. It's too much damage. GG, Ben, we've got a series on our hands.
Cool, calm, and calculated. Stats scouted out that aggression early on and then made all the right calls. Dark did something a little unorthodox, something that you don't see out of a lot of players. He made the right call. He went back home, made drones, and actually caught up in economy surprisingly fast. This is a guy that is a macro beast, an absolute bulldozer of a player. But I love the fact that he managed to just say, hey, he went to different gear. He knew it wasn't going to work, and he didn't commit to it. You pointed out that it wasn't stubborn of him. And he made a game out of that, a way closer game than it ever should have been.
Yep. He almost got, like, perhaps a little bit baited by Stats when Stats was like, hey, you've got a lot of Banelings, and I have a lot of Zealots. Wouldn't it be nice for you if your slow Banelings connect with my Zealots? And Dark is like, yeah, that actually would be really nice. So then he kind of followed that army, slightly off creep as well. And that's when Stats made the hold with the Archons, but pulled the Zealots back. And yeah, he lost a couple Zealots, 3 or 4. But that's when those first 18 Banelings pretty much disappeared. And that is really what allowed Stats in the first place to do that much damage with his first attack. I enjoyed that game, actually. I really did. It was different. The timing was a little bit offbeat of some of the other PvZs we see, but you can really see that these two guys are very evenly matched, and this is not going to be an easy semi-final for anyone.
Absolutely not, Kevin. And spawning over in the bottom right side of Port Alexander, it is Stats.
Still representing Splice, of course. He always looks mighty fine in that hoodie. On the left top side, we're looking in the main base. Over Zerg, representing Ghost Crew. It is Dark.
Making a game out of a completely dead situation there. He was down to 22 workers against 38. Came back, macroed very well. Stats did play a little bit defensive, but rightly so. Most of those would just keep on attacking you with something or wait to catch you off guard. So did hesitate a little bit on the probe production, but he was just cool and calm about just making sure that he's kept his lead in that game.
And the nice thing for Stats as well is that you're always a little bit worried about some of these crazy Zerg builds. You know that there are a couple of them that can hit you, and that game, guys, would have looked completely different if Stats opens up with a Stargate and builds a Phoenix. None of that would have been good against the opening of Dark, and there is a chance that Dark would have just been able to pick up a very quick and easy win. But Stats actually was on the right side of things. He went for that Robo, and now if you're Dark, even though he actually still played a good game out of a very bad scenario, you're still like, man, I should have never done that build. And it's actually hard to then tell yourself to do it again. And Stats knows that as well. He's like, okay, after he won a macro game and he failed a rush, it is unlikely that he's going to do stuff like that again. I must say though, the gas this game by Dark was very quick. This doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's a little bit quicker than you see it with most macro-oriented builds. So even though Stats just shut down one of those rushes, it is important that he keeps on scouting.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. The rush from Dark, like, I love the fact that he was 1-0 up and then he committed to a build like that.
Yep.
Because now Stats knows for the rest of the series, wow, this guy really can throw anything at me. And even though Dark did lose that game, he might be like, that was a bad build to throw. This is a series. This isn't they have to go the whole way here. So making sure your opponent knows that you can't just do a Stargate every game against me because I will kill you if you make the wrong call there.
Yep.
That's kind of nice, honestly, for Dark, even if he did go a map down.
Now there is a Stargate being warped in. Of course, Port Alexander is slightly bigger than our previous map, so maybe this is Stats' reasoning. He's like, you know what, on small maps, I'm probably opening up with the robot to be safe. On the bigger maps, I like Stargate. I like to have some map presence, and I like to do a little bit of economic damage as well. Dark is gonna fly his Overlords in. He's gonna spot the Stargate, and he's like, you should have done it last game, by the way. That would have been nice, but that is not happening over here.
No, and back at home, we just have a standard macro game from Dark. Getting his third hatch up, getting the queens out, getting the early lings to deflect the adept. Queen at the front as well. This is always nice. You got to have your queen at the front to attack that adept ASAP. Otherwise, that guy just runs on through, which looks like he will be doing. And I was worried that he was going to be committing there, but gets a good full scout off. Gets to see no gases mining, and he knows that it shouldn't realistically be any pressure early on.
You know, the funny thing is that I think a lot of Protoss players there would have just walked their adept into the natural and shade away from the natural, shade back to the map, and hope to get a drone kill, which is really nice. Any worker you can pick off early on is fantastic for a Protoss. The problem there for Sats is that he doesn't shade into the main base, and then he doesn't know whether that main is upgrading to a lair already or not, or if there's a crazy building like a Baneling Nest or a Roach Warren. So Stats probably is like, yeah, I'd like to get a drone here, and I know I probably can, but it's more important for me to make sure that I'm not losing to another aggressive build.
Knowledge is power in this game, Kevin, and if you are the best Protoss in the world, an extra drone kill compared to potentially winning or losing the game on really crucial information like a scout, that's big. We also see more oracles being built by Stats, so he's also mixing it up with his starport play. Often you see that they get a Phoenix out to deny the Overlords and maybe continue the Phoenix play, but here, 2 oracles, this could deal damage later on.
We have a Spore Crawler, I want to say, I believe in the main base and in the third, but apparently there's not one in the natural. So the natural is perhaps the best spot to attack. Now the queens are, I like the way he's spreading out his queens, right? There is a queen on the ramp, so this queen can obviously keep both the main and the natural safe. I love that creep tumor in between as well, because queens obviously are very, very slow off creep. So it is important for Dark to connect these bases as quickly as he can. Even though Dark didn't see what came out of that Stargate, it feels like he's going to be relatively well prepared for this. Look at the movement on these queens, man.
Yeah, and he's all over it. He got to see the oracles flying in, and now he's just going to tickle them down. If Stats doesn't deal any damage, he does find this mineral line, though, this one being the most exposed one, but barely takes any hull damage whatsoever.
I honestly think that's the most that Stats was ever going to get there, so I'm okay with him just getting 3 drones and getting out of there. Once again, after Dark spots the Stargate, he's like, nope, no Baneling Nest. No Roach Warren, straight into Hydras. And yeah, that's really awesome against double Stargate. In this scenario, it also works out against maybe quick Archons or even a quick Storm build. We don't know exactly yet what Stats is going to go for. The thing is, though, that if Dark keeps doing this, there is a chance that in Game 3 or Game 4, or, well, this is Game 3, but in Game 4 or 5, that Stats at one point is like, you know what? I'm going to make a Phoenix, throw down a Twilight Council, and I'm going to follow this up with an 8-gate Warp Prism all in. And if Dark has nothing to work with other than Zerglings and Queens, he's going to be in an insane amount of trouble. We saw certain Zergs defend that once upon a time, but normally that's supposed to be a straight-up win for Protoss. So I like what Dark is doing, but he is playing a dangerous game. You can't always do this build that Dark is doing.
These players are learning each other as this series goes on. Dark did get a really hefty drone lead in this game. Up to 64 drones, still harassing his Stats, getting quite a few drone kills. The main base does get away with his oracles
1
too.
HP?
And he's even going behind the main too. That is some crazy stuff by Stats.
Yeah, well done. And at the same time, he's pushing back this creep. So even though Dark played very greedy, I think Stats is kind of keeping him in check here. And he's like, no, I'm still in this game. You know, you may have created a minor economic advantage for yourself.
We did see a Link Scout on that third too, and he didn't see any probes whatsoever. So Dark could be thinking, this guy's going to be attacking me pretty soon, even though we do see it is saturated.
It's kind of interesting to see Dark throw down the Roach Warren at this point. So maybe he doesn't want to make too many Lings in this case. Maybe he doesn't want to make too many Banelings, but it's going to be mostly Roach Hydra. And maybe later down the road, we could see those Lurkers as well. I'd love to see a long, drawn-out game with, let's say, like 2-3 Robots from Stats going up against Lurkers with adaptive talents of Dark. That's kind of my dream scenario.
I just love seeing, we do see more Oracle harass joining too. There's been a good 10 or so drones killed by these two Oracles, so definitely worth their weight in gold, also for revelating and scouting. And he's been using them to bait the army back so we can really clear up that creep. If we look in the middle, all that creep's been killed here by Stats, so really making Dark work for it.
Yep, and Roach Hydra can actually be pretty good, even against Immortals and Archons, but it's mostly on creep, right? It's their ability to kite that Protoss army. That's not really going to be the case here. 15 Roaches on the way for Dark, and Stats is actually moving out. He's warping in more Zealots on the top side of the map as well. It's a little bit similar to what we saw before. This is without Storm. There is no Templar Archives yet. As far actually, I guess he made it, but he definitely doesn't have Storm. So he's like, all right, I'm gonna try to do my best here with these Archons, with the Immortals and the Zealots. It's not an all-in, but this is one of those attacks where things does have to go somewhat decently, because if you lose all your Archons and your Immortals, you're gonna roll over when you get counterattacked.
It's definitely a strong army, but Dark is not scared of it. Dark's the one kind of pouncing on Stats here. Stats realizing, wow, I just wanted to cross across the map just to force out some battle units out of you, but you've already got a ton of them. Dark's close to approaching 200 supply here as well.
Stats has to be very careful. I like the Zealot run by in the main base, but I think Dark's gonna take care of it. He's got plenty of Roaches to deal with it. Now he's a little bit out of position here, but the army of Dark, I think, has enough firepower. There's a lot of Hydras on the right top side of this battle. Those Zealots are disappearing, and Stats, you're playing a dangerous game. You don't have too many Force Fields anymore. I think the Protoss has to retreat.
He does, and he does keep those two Archons alive, but this is a slow army. Dark still making battle units too, not increasing his economy at this point in time. There aren't any Ravagers left for these force fields, so Stats getting a pretty good trade here.
Yeah, I like it. A lot of units from Dark were still out of position, right? So those units are actually not there, and he felt maybe I can make a stance here, but against the army of Dark, Storm would just be so phenomenal. Now Stats is firing up Storm, but that does mean it's still gonna take a little while before it's done. Dark is not building drones, Dark is not throwing down a Lurker Den. Dark wants to make some magic happen here.
A cheeky Roach there, came from the backside and did take out an Archon there. Dark is making a lot of units and does look to be piling on the pressure pretty soon.
Oracles.
Marching back to his base though, is this just the Oracles making him mess up a little bit at home and still constantly getting damage done? An Oracle finally falls, but those guys together must have got 15 drone kills or so.
I love the way that Stats play that, man. My Protoss heart was beating pretty fast. I was like, you're playing so dangerous. Your opponent's got nothing but Roach Hydra. You're out so far. You're almost out of Sentry energy. And Stats is like, no, don't worry. I'm still in control of this. I know where my Warp Prism is. I know where the Zealots are. He warped in all these High Templars at home. He's even firing up +3. I know that it looks like Dark's army has been bigger. Wow, 8 Dropper-Lords, by the way. That's cool as well. And Dark is on 4 bases, but if Storm finishes up, which it's seconds away from, the army of Stats just becomes like 4 times as powerful.
Definitely, Kevin. He's kind of charging him down now that Storm has finished. +3 on the way as well for Stats. Dark's army doesn't really get any better at this point in time. And we do see the next plan of action in Dark will be going for that main base. And this, if it does get to your main base, that is a lot of units. But
Stats doesn't know. I mean, he had Oracles.
Still marching across the map, Kevin.
Yep, but the Oracles obviously is still trapped in the left top side. So normally you would tax something. There's a Lurker Den as well. But this is about to get really, really messy. We could end up in a base trade scenario. Stats can, of course, recall units as well, but is that what he wants to do? These pilots are going to fall, that Templar Archives will most likely fall, and this game is about to get wild.
And what do both these players do in this situation? Dark trying to get away with as many drones as possible, still making as many units as he can too. Stats doing exactly the same on his side of the map. Both these players do have a bank though, and that Forge is very vulnerable here, so he probably will lose the +3. Still getting that Lurker Den in the main base. Does catch the Maynard transfer of probes. This is a really big deal, by the way, because they do have to reset up their economies. This is a big kill.
Is any probe gonna make it? Seems like
almost. But now he's gonna get on creep though. Now he's faster. Probe is down.
That's it. I mean, you're gonna have to recall then. I know that a lot of these necks are very low on HP, but I don't think you can ever win a full-on base rate when you see all of these drones making it to the other side of the map.
The other probes. Oh,
okay.
It's just drones on the map. But he does follow him now. He does spot them. But if he kills them, the base trade will definitely be in favor.
Oh, but the Forge is still going. What? Okay.
Oh no. Dark doesn't make mistakes, man.
That would have been insane, because that could have had a big impact on this game. Now, the one big advantage that Zerg has... I was like, Dark, you're kind of low on buildings, aren't you? I think where is Stats building anything, by the way? Sometimes weird things happen. This is all he has at this point. What are these probes doing? Okay, he's warping in 2 gases. There's a lot of money in the bank. Does he have an observer here? Does Stats have an observer? Oh my... Uh-oh. That means he can't clean up the creep.
No, he definitely can't, and now he can't make a base here. Can he make a base anywhere on the dark side of the map?
He still has this one Oracle, so he can tag the creep tumors a couple times. That's not the ideal way, but instead he's going to go for the Nexus on the low ground. Now what I wanted to say is one advantage that Zerg has over Protoss. There goes the only detection, by the way, is that obviously Protoss has pilots. A lot of the pilots got taken out. Zerg has overlords. Most of these overlords are still alive, so if they rebuild... Oh, no, that's... Oh my goodness.
That is a mistake. You see it. Frustration on the face of Stats. Stats' army, up until that point too, actually looks stronger in a head-on-head engagement.
Yep.
He had Storm. He still has a lot of Storm. He has Immortals.
He has better upgrades.
This is kind of a precarious location for Dark to be, though, right?
They're sandwiching each other. I mean, they're coming in from every angle. Dark with the full surround. The other units of Stats are coming in from the left side.
This is so much Dark. This is the best engagement you could have hoped for. Stats' army was all out of position. And right now, these are some juicy storms, though, in the army of Dark. Does Stats still hold anyway? This is getting down to the wire, Kevin.
Yeah, but this is off creep, right? So these Hydras are not as fast as they should be, and there is still plenty of Storm. That was pretty awesome by Dark. He's like, you're trying to surround me. I'm actually surrounding you. But he surrounded the least important force, right, of Stats. That was not the force with most of the Immortals and the High Templars. No, that was the force of just a couple Zealots. So in a way, it worked out for Stats. And I mean, he won that battle, and suddenly Dark is really on the ropes. Yes, he's got money in the bank. He's got a couple drones. He lands another Storm. Stats that is as well. These last few units are going down, and what can Dark really produce? Does he have any production facilities at this point? No, right?
We do have a hatchery at the bottom of the map. He is remaking a spawning pool, so he's really trying to survive here, just basically buying time with these Hydras at this point in time, but his army's diminished. 21 works on the map. Is he mining from somewhere else also in the top right here? But it has been caught by Stats. I think Stats has done it in this game.
I think Stats has done it as well. Maybe Dark got a little impatient there. I mean, he's technically the one who had way more drones out on the map. He had more buildings as well. Maybe he underestimated the strength of that Protoss army, but I mean, Stats is gonna check every single base. He knows that he can split up a couple of units. Dark has no units. He's got 2 supply. I don't even know what, a queen, I guess, somewhere. I don't know where that queen would be. But Dark, what does he have? He has a Hydra. Oh, and it's actually defending. It's keeping the drone safe.
Oh, but then the Immortal comes along and shuts that down. The dreams of Dark being destroyed right there.
Now it's 0 supply. Dark's gonna rebuild, but Stats has enough units to send a couple Zealots here, to send a couple Immortals over there as well. And I don't think he's ever gonna let Dark completely rebuild. I'm shocked that Dark felt that he had to attack Stats there off creep. I don't think he really did. Like, he had more drones, he had more bases. Of course, it was gonna take a long time to really get something out of it, but it was still a risky call to make.
And as you point out, Kevin, the infrastructure for Zerg wasn't totally dead. He kept all the Overlords alive, which that's a huge investment. And Stats seeing this base as well. It won't be long until he sends just a couple units up there. And GG, Stats takes a nail-biting Game 3 against Dark. Oh, and you see it, relief, man. Like, he made a few big errors that game when he lost that Warp Prism at the end.
Yep.
Then getting caught with his pants down at that last base of Stats, but Stats holds strong. That was very cool, calm, calculated play out of him, moving across the map. That's one of the scary things too. He knows he can get away with these things. He knew the army of Dark was moving at the pace that it did. He managed to force out more battle units instead of getting his economy going. Then, at the face of getting dropped there by 10 Dropper Lords or something like that, just marches over the map, gets the base trade going, and handles it beautifully.
Yeah, and squeezed out at the last moment those couple probes as well. Otherwise, he'd be in a lot of trouble, and he would have to recall. But then there's always a chance that your High Templars get dropped in the front somewhere, or, you know, they get picked off immediately, they get surrounded. That was a really fun game. I loved it, and you could see it at Stats as well. He's like, whoa! That was a good one. He's now 1 map away from making it to the grand finals of the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice, where, of course, Sue is waiting. I mean, these 3 guys, Sue, Dark, Stats, they know each other. These are not just good Starcraft players. They are the very, very best when it comes to Legacy of the Void. You can even say all time. They've been around for 4 or 5 years. They always make these deep runs. It just doesn't get much better than this.
These guys were the aces in their pro league teams. You had Dark of SKT, you had Stats of KT. These were the big household names. Getting into map 4 in this series, spawning in the top right of Year 0, it is Stats.
And in the left top side, this man has played a very impressive tournament so far, but he's on the ropes. He needs to bring it back and send us into a game 5 if he dreams of lifting that trophy. On the left top side, it is Dark.
Stats has done such a good job of reading Dark and making him make decisions that he doesn't necessarily want to be making. We talked about that move across the map when he's at 150 supply against like a 200 Dark. He was just buying time behind that, getting the Storm, clearing up the creep as well, using the Oracles to bait back the army while clearing up the creep. Beautiful textbook play by Stats.
That's the funny thing, right? Because I think if Stats goes up against a different build where Dark doesn't suddenly have 22 roaches after he already has the Hydras, I actually think Stats commits a little bit more and he probably wipes in even more Zealots and really tries to make something happen. But the moment he realizes, he's like, whoa, you've got so many roaches as well, why you want straight into Hydras? That suddenly means that you're on the clock. I'm not on the clock here. Like, I don't have to do much. So he's just staying there. He's threatening with his army. He's winning ground. He's winning position. And that's when he's like, okay, I need Storm against this. And once again, these are easy calls to make if you're just watching a game of StarCraft 2 or you're analyzing the replay of your friend. But doing it in the middle of a semi-finals of IEM Katowice, that's why Stats is one of the very, very best Protoss players.
He's learning his opponent now. He's knowing or getting to know his styles. And credit to Dark as well. He is mixing it up a lot.
Yeah.
He's getting away with really hardcore droning at the start when he needs to. He kind of reads every game too that Stats has been going for these less aggressive builds early on, meaning that he can drone up as much as he is. It's so beautiful when you see two StarCraft players really learning each other, adapting to one another, and playing against one another, not just the race itself.
Dark, of course, they've both been on this stage already here in Spodek as well in the semifinals. And of course, Stats even made it to the finals in 2017 and he got incredibly close to lifting the trophy, but in the end he fell to his teammate TY. TY also had a pretty decent run here. Out of all the Terrans, he came the furthest in a good top 12 finish. But that's one of these things that you never forget about as a player. You make it into the grand finals of this big arena in Poland. So much money and prestige, eternal glory on the line. And he lost that grand finals 3-4. I'm sure Stats would love to correct history and be like, no, I was actually on the winning side of it once as well.
Stats really thrives on the stage. Even though he's lost in quite a few finals now, he always puts up a heck of a fight.
Yep.
One of the greatest players of all time. The most standard Protoss you'll know, but standard for a good reason. He's just a perfect player.
That's a very sweet start there for Stats. I mean, that Overlord was just kind of peeking in, but that Stalker actually just picked it off immediately. Now Dark is supply blocked as well, as the Observer is pointing out. It's a pretty big one, and even this Overlord is going to take quite a bit of damage. It should be fine.
If he gets this Overlord too, Kevin, this is a really...
massive.
I think it will get there, so...
It will live, but it's so close. Don't misclick now. Oh my goodness. I would have misclicked.
Or every, and if you do make a mistake here when you're already 2-1 down against a player as good as Stats, that's a rough start to have. But it does keep the Overlord alive. The thing is, the other Overlord was one that was almost guaranteed to live if he was just a little bit more careful there.
Yeah, and the sad thing is that Dark still doesn't even know. Is this a Robo? Is this a Stargate? I mean, we know it's a Robo, but he still has to throw up a Spore Crawler, because if it is an Oracle, you're not ready for it. Dark doesn't want to lose. I hope he was paying attention, by the way, because that died very quickly. But I think he did. So it is a War Prism with a Stalker now inside of it. Is that correct?
Yes, it does have a Stalker. In fact, it might be... oh, yeah, it is a Stalker.
I'd love to see him warp into 2 Adepts. That is the... If there's one thing I truly loved about Heroes semi-final, and I'm going to be honest, there wasn't that much, but...
There wasn't that much to love, no, Kevin.
But I did love the War Prism opening on King's Cove with the 2 Adepts, shading in multiple times, picking it up. That's stuff we've seen in PvP in the past. I mean, Showtime and Neve used to love to do that, but they warp in some Adepts, shade on top of a Sentry, and they pick it up. I really love that play from Hero, but Stats is going to switch things up and instead just walk around with 3 Stalkers. Oh, it takes a lot of damage on his War Prism.
I'm not sure that was worth it for the damage on that War Prism, because the less health that has, that doesn't come back. And sometimes you get in these situations where you need your War Prism to survive, because getting that bio down, it shuts down aggression completely. No more reinforcements can join the field.
Stalkers were looking to get that Overlord, but the Lynx will keep that Overlord safe. Stats at least is pushing back the creep, and that is something that is very nice, because these things can spiral out of control. Dark is, by the way, one more time just getting away with a very casual 4-minute 40-second Hydralisk Den. These things are not normal, guys. With your tournament live on the line as well, if Stats would have gone Phoenix, 9-gate, Zealot, War Prism, Speed, this game is over. Like, Dark is taking some risk here, but he just wants to get these Hydras out as quickly as possible.
One thing we definitely have to say, though, this is the biggest map in the pool, one of the biggest maps we've ever had. So if you are going to get away with it on an A map, this is the one to do it. He's building a lot of Hydralisks, by the way, so unsure what he's kind of predicting or sensing out of Stats. His scouting early on definitely got thwarted by Stats.
Yep. Well, he's on 53 drones, right? And if you don't have a Roach Warning, you don't have a Bailing Nest, it's better to build at least a couple of Hydras. I think it's very unlikely he's indeed gonna make more Hydras and more Lings and try to just win the game, because this map is so incredibly large. It's really funny, because when this map got introduced, I was like, you know, our bases, like, when it comes to the airspace, that seems kind of close, you know, when you just look at the mini-map, it's like, I can do some funny air builds, and it's like, you know what? Let's try to send a couple ground units to the other side of the map. And then it's like, whoa, there's rocks, there is detours, there is high ground, there is low ground.
Then you look at your clock and it's like 7 days later, we've made it.
It's like, okay, this doesn't seem very well. You do a 1 base on lane and your opponent defends it on 3 bases. You're like, okay, never again. This map is a little too big for that.
This has been a pretty standard game, though. There are definitely things that Dark is skipping, like Banelings early on, Lings early on, Roaches early on. Just go straight for those Hydralisks. He does have a superior drone count, and that is nice, as Cyril would say too.
He's nice. The 2 random adapts denying a 4th base from going down. Stats is gonna shade in as well. Will he let that shade finish up? No, he doesn't. He canceled it because he knew the Hydras were close.
Stats has had really good map presence this game. Yep. This Warp Prism granted him to free up that creep. It was an unusual concoction of units that he used to do it, but just making everything work here.
Dark is making a lot of units at this point. 24 Zerglings have been fired up. There are a couple Banelings morphing as well. He did start +1 melee, so that gives us the idea that Dark is not looking for an all-out attack. But I have the feeling that he wants to get ready for a big battle at least. If Stats commits and Stats is moving out, I mean, Baneling speed may not be done yet, guys, but if the Banelings connect with the Zealots, I think Dark is going to be in a mighty fine position here.
I think he's moving out against a very prepared Dark here. The supplies are close, but having so many Banelings already morphed and the firepower behind all these Hydralisks.
+2 is finishing up, and that's perhaps the go moment for Stats. Now, Dark's army is absolutely capable of dealing with this, but guys, good force fields and Archons taking care of Banelings can actually turn things upside down very quickly. Stats is looking for another cancel on that 4th base. He doesn't know yet that Dark took it on the north side, but the moment he didn't see it in the left bottom side, he's like, all right, Dark actually looks like he wants to perhaps sandwich this army.
Ooh, that could have been a good second force field there to catch those units.
He needs to wait for Bailing speed, though. Okay, Bailing speed is done now, but I wouldn't like to see him fight without Bailing speed off creep.
One of the hard things for Dark here is that there isn't that much creep at all for him. So trying to navigate where this army is of Stats, he has to keep tabs on it, because if he loses it for 1 minute, he can get badly force field and not take a good fight. The Warp Prism does fly to the main base here, Kevin.
Yeah, there isn't that much actually, right? Oh, okay. The Zergling is going to show up because he did fly over that hatchery, which is the 4th base. I think that Sess is a little bit sad he didn't see this one a little bit quicker, because I think his army was technically capable of being strong enough to get at least 1 more cancel when Bailing speed wasn't done yet. Now +1 is finishing up, but of course Stats has his key upgrades as well. The armies are clashing actually in the middle of the map. A couple of defensive force fields go down, and we'll keep these Zerg forces at bay. I'm a little bit worried for Dark. Like, yes, his army looks big, his army looks powerful. Yeah, exactly. There seems to be no B plan here.
No, I don't think there is. He hasn't produced a drone for the last few minutes, and yeah, that's because Stats has been out on the map here, but this army, he's just flooding in with Lings right now. There is going to be a huge force of Dark marching across the map.
And Storm is done, and that's a lot of High Templars already, and off creep, this many Storms against Hydra, Ling, Bane. I'm starting to get pretty worried here for Dark. This is not the fight I think that Dark is ever looking for. Storm is done, and Dark has to retreat. Dark is in a rough position, man. He needs to come up with something. Maybe some drop play, maybe Lurkers, but he cannot win with just +1 and Hydra, Link, Banelings. Dark, you need more than what you currently have.
Now, has Stats kind of lost Dark on the map? No, he just spotted with these Zealots. Good scouting by Stats. Dark does look like he's going to be defending this Warp Prism most likely. Banelings running into this juicy mineral line though, but Stats pulling away at a perfect time. Now he's going to give up all these Banelings actually.
That's a oh, but he forgot about those. Look at the probes, they're coming back.
Oh my
Stats
gosh.
That could have been exciting. Dark actually still fighting that. The Banelings are getting close to some probes, but they're really not getting much. Stats handled this well, even though he lost some Zealots in the left top side. There are a lot of battles going on, and that's why we see some funny army movements, because obviously these guys can only look at one thing at a time. I like what Dark did there, he didn't get what he was perhaps hoping for, but he didn't overcommit either. At least he didn't throw away his entire army, because that could have been the end of his Into Extreme Masters run.
The main thing here is we've seen the evolution of Stats' army. He got the Immortals out, now he's got the High Templars. He's got really superior upgrades here too.
Yeah.
This is a very, very scary army. Dark is droning at this point in time too, getting superior or getting better upgrades for himself. But what is the next stage? This army isn't that strong against Stats, and if he gets caught out here, this could be really bad.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of side storms, and Dark knows that he cannot stick around for too long.
Oh,
A
good
force
force
field
field,
there
yeah.
by Stat. I don't understand why Dark didn't take care of these rocks on the right side. I would have loved to see him do that, because then he could have potentially cancelled the fort base, he could have ran some circles, and that is what he needs. The more that Dark moves around, the better it is for Lings and Banes, and the more exposed those High Templars are. But if it's a straight-on engagement, it seems like it's always going to be good for Stats.
And great storms at the bottom, and all those Banelings definitely softening them up. A wall of Archons with High Templars behind them. How do you engage this? An Arc by Dark, but there are too many Immortals, and Stats is pushing on through. Oh, he does get a good catch on these High Templars, but there's not enough. I think Stats is doing it. Is he moving on? Yes! He is in the finals!
We are going to have an amazing Protoss versus Zerg Grand Final as Stats once again, just like 2017, will make it into the Grand Finals of this tournament, and he did it in an awesome way. We saw some PVZs in the first semi-final. Didn't go that well for the Protoss. Stats is like, no, this is how you play Protoss. I love the calls, I love the dynamic army movement, I love the upgrades when he needed them the most. That was a really, really beautiful performance by Stats, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say about it as he's on stage with Sue.
Thank you very much, Rotterdam. Congratulations, Stats. You are back in the Grand Finals here in Katowice after 2 years. An amazing accomplishment. Tell us what's going through your head right now.
축하드려요. 벌써 이제 2년 만에 다시 결승전에 올라가게 됐는데 소감 얘기해 주세요.
2년 전 제가 일단 4강 무대에 섰을 때 2년 전의 기억이 이렇게 나면서 다시 한번 꼭 결승에 올라가서 2년 전에는 제가 준우승을 했었는데 이번에는 꼭 우승을 하고 싶다라는 생각이 들었어요.
So he says, when I made it to the semifinals this year, I thought about 2 years ago when I was able to make it to the grand finals. Back then, I unfortunately got second place. I was runner-up, so I thought to myself that this year, I wanted to make it to the grand finals to not get runner-up. I wanted to try to become champion for sure, and you done it. You're in the grand finals, and this was such a phenomenal series against Dark. I need to ask about Game 3 because it was such an interesting game. It turned into a base trade. Tell us what happened in that game.
세 번째 반대에서 물어보고 싶은데 정말 이상하게 엘리전으로 갔어요. 그 경기에 대해서 얘기해 주세요.
제가 두 개의 예언자로 피해를 많이 져가지고 제가 느끼기에는 제가 유리하다고 느끼면서 경기를 했었었는데 령우가 이렇게 엘리전 판단을 하면서 이거 잘하면 질 수도 있겠구나 이런 좀 걱정이 됐었는데 다행히 그래도 병력이 사이오닉 스톰이 령우 병력 쪽에 잘 들어가가지고 이길 수 있었던 것 같아요.
So he says in game number 3, I thought that I was in such a good position because my 2 oracles did so much damage earlier on. So I thought to myself I was in a good position. But then Darks came and attacked and turned it into a sort of weird base trade scenario. So I was quite worried and I thought maybe I could potentially lose this. But at the very end, I think I was able to clinch the win because my army was superior. I was able to land some great storms off and take out his army units. And that's why I was able to close out game number 3. And now you're moving forward to the grand finals once again here in Katowice. It's going to be another Zerg player, Sue. Now, Sue is someone you played last year in the GSL round of 4. It was a very close series, 4-3. You came out on top. Can you do it again today?
이제 어윤수 선수를 결승전에서 만날 건데 작년 GSL 4강에서 만났을 때는 4대3으로 되게 재밌는 경기로 이겼었는데 이번에도 똑같이 이길 수 있나요?
이번에도 이길 자신 있고 스코어는 몇 대 몇이 나올지는 장담은 못하지만은 이길 자신 있습니다.
So he says, for sure, I am confident that I can take Sue down. I'm not going to make any promises as to what that score is going to look like this time around, but yes, I am confident that I can take down Sue. And one last thing, Stats. It's so amazing to be in front of all of these fans here in Katowice. Do you have anything to say to them? 이제 팬들이 엄청 많은데 팬들에게 한마디 해주세요.
정말 24강 경기 할 때부터 되게 열정적으로 이렇게 응원해 주셔서 너무너무 감사드리고요. 정말 내년에도 또 오고 싶을 정도로 네, 정말 열정적으로 응원해 주셔서 너무 감사합니다.
He says, from the round of 24, you guys have just been so passionate with all of your cheering and support. So it's been such a pleasure to be playing in front of you guys. It makes me want to come back next year to be able to play in front of all of you guys. So thank you so much for all of your passion and support. And once again, Stats will be moving forward to the grand finals.
That's right, the strong bulwark holds in the form of Stats. Impressive stuff from him. 3-1 in the semi-finals means he moves on into the grand final. Welcome back to the battle station here. I've got In Control, I've got Todd. Guys, Stats looked very, very formidable here in the semi-final.
Well, not in that game one, but other than that, yes, after that, he kind of turned it on, and that was him running the show after that, just playing like pretty flawless, to be honest. That last game, you know, like the fighting and all that, being able to pull back the way he did, landing the storms, because, you know, like our commentators, they did a very good job of describing the action and all that, and like the potential that Stats had and how well he was doing. That's because they understand the game very well. But one thing that we should remember is that any lesser player here would have lost super hard in the center. You know, like Banelings would have connected. They would have missed maybe some force fields and some storms. Not Stats. He stayed solid throughout and played like the absolute best game that he can play, and that worked out well for him.
Yeah, I think the intricacies of what it's like to engage against that composition from Stats perspective is a lot like fencing. It's a lot of footwork. It's a lot of small jabs and movements, and it's the subtler things like Todd was talking about. Whereas if you just kind of, I'm a Protoss, and face roll against the keyboard and just A-move against that, the Banelings blow you up, the Hydras have good concave, and you actually lose that fight. Like we saw in the first series, when you just attack and kind of mindlessly go after somebody like that, you can lose. But Stats did such a good job of making that look really beautiful that it ends up being a little bit, unfortunately, one-sided, right? Like Dark is the one who's like, I was expecting you to commit to this attack, and then it was Dark that over-pursued, didn't change composition, and lost because of it.
Gotta have a good parry and riposte against the Zerg mid-game, I suppose.
Oh my god.
There you go.
Whatever you bring up is ready. Fencing, of course. Kainu Kailais was
I
there.
did a little bit.
Look at these
when I was
cultured guys at this desk over here. Talking about other things than video games. I can't believe it.
All right, let's check in with the bracket as well, of course, as 2 of our players now remain here out of the 76 that entered at the Intel Extreme Masters. Katowice, Sue, and Stats will play against one another in a best-of-7 grand final. The winner will walk away with $150,000. Big stuff on the line here in this best-of-7. A lot of questions for people outside, I'm sure, saying, can Sue do it here on a stage like this? It's all really going to come down to how these guys are going to match up against one another. Guys, excited for the final? It's a pretty good matchup.
Yeah, it's hard to pick a favorite, really. Sue has a winning record against Stats, but Sue is the king of second places. And Stats, I feel, has looked more impressive. So if I had to pick a favorite, I'd say Stats, but they've both been playing incredible. And come on, Sue is taking all the second places. At some point, he's bound to win one of these tournaments eventually, right?
It's a good one. It's a dream final. I mean, obviously with Cyril out of the picture and some of the other things that fell away, this is as good as it gets. Stats, I mean, this is amazing. Sue.
Yeah, very, very exciting. And of course, don't forget that you can also be involved at home as well by checking out the war chest in-game. So not only can you purchase the war chest, and then that gives you access to a lot of skins that are available there, which you can earn via experience in-game or even out of game if you watch some of the featured streamers, but also 25% of that purchase goes to Starcraft esports too. This right here, Jeff, Todd, everything
Comes to me.
It's not directly.
With each person.
5% straight into the bank
A
account
lot
of
of it goes
Kailais.
to me. Yeah, that's right here.
We'll be back right after this for the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice Grand Final.